Welcome to the Adoption Journey podcast. I am your host, Tarsha Smith, and thank you for joining me yet again on your favorite adoption podcast. If you are watching us on YouTube, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you're watching on Amazon, Apple, or Spotify, make sure you follow us and give us 5 stars. Today in the building, I have yet another cousin. A lot of you have heard me talk about the fact that I have 3 sides of the family: my mother's side, my father's side, and my biological side. Today, we are representing my father's side of the family. He's also very intricate in my story for those of you that have been following my journey. This is the cousin who I reached out to when I found my biological brother and who helped solidify that I had found the right person. So without further ado, we are going to speak to him because guess what? He is also an adoptee. Hey, David.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
The Lord is tremendously good, so I'm great. Thank
Absolutely. Thank you for being a guest on the show. And I want to get into the fact that you are also adopted, but I think yours is a little different from mine. If I understand your story correctly, you actually have a kinship adoption, correct?
So yes, I do. Actually, my mother, biological mother, had me at a very young age,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up being adopted on my mother's side by my great aunt, which is who I call mama. And so the connection on the Pope Quarrel side of the house is just the fact that my dad, MD, is all related to the Quarrels. That's how we're all tied in there together.
And your great aunt, and I'm making sure I understand, was my grandfather's sister. Is that correct?
No, no, no.
No,
Uh,
I don't have that right.
it's the other way.
It's
Uh,
the other way.
my dad actually is Uncle Johnny's cousin.
Gotcha.
I,
Uncle
I'm,
Johnny was my grandfather.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was. I'm sorry about that. I think
No,
that
it's okay. You're fine.
Uncle Johnny's. Uh, yeah, they were cousins. They were cousins.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how old were you when you found out that you were adopted?
So I was 9 years old, and I just happened to be, and I was raised as an only child. Although I have 4 other brothers and sisters biologically, I was raised as an only child. And I was in Chicago. We got basements, and so I was in the basement, you know, playing, I don't know, cops, robbers, Batman, Robin, something. I was playing and just rummaging and going through stuff. And there was a drawer in the in a cabinet, if you will, and I looked in that drawer and found paperwork. And I saw, some old grades of mine. I actually saw old grades of my biological mother because she actually used to go to school there as well.
But
And
you didn't know that was your biological mother at that time, right?
at that point, I did not know that she was biologically my
Okay.
mother. Um, but I saw paperwork that said, and I knew for whatever reason at that age, I knew what adoption was. I'm not even sure of how I knew that, but anyway, at that age, I knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did was having the paperwork. I went upstairs and I looked at my mom and dad and said, "Hey, am I adopted?" They kind of looked at each other and looked at me and said, "Yeah," and you know, told me who my biological mother actually is. And I said, "Okay." and I went back down in the basement because I was working on some massive project,
With
and
cops and robbers.
it was something, it was something. So my mind was always moving, so I was doing something, but I knew, I understood, I got it, I got the concept, but I wanted to get back to my project.
So it's that sounds a lot like, with me. I found out and it's just like, okay, it just kind of kept it moving.
Yeah.
So how was your childhood? You had a good childhood?
Are you kidding me? Absolutely phenomenal
Okay.
childhood. I am so incredibly grateful for the upbringing that I had. Yeah, because I mean, I've just had a lot of exposure to a lot of things in my life. And had I been raised by my biological mother, I would not have, not probably, but I would not have had, you know, the type of upbringing that I had. I wouldn't have had exposure to the degree that I've had. Wouldn't have just been in the position to even do a lot of the things that I had done, even at that early age, growing up into young adulthood and adulthood. So, yeah, I had a great, great, great childhood.
Okay.
I got
So
whooped just like anybody else would have gotten whooped in punishments. So I don't feel like I missed out on
on
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so growing up, knowing that you were adopted, you had a great childhood. So at what point, let me ask you this.
Mhm.
I'm going to assume you were never angry about being adopted or felt abandoned, or did you ever experience any of that?
So one time, but it's interesting, and perhaps I say that it's interesting because I emoted about it once in my life and I was already an adult, and just kind of having the question, and I shed a few tears just having the question of, I think it was something like, was something wrong with me, but I promise you it didn't last long at all. And when I say it didn't last long, I'm talking like I asked the question, I shed a couple of tears, and then I went on about my life because I
Hmm.
realized just how incredibly blessed I was back then. And I think I may have been late teens, like early young adulthood type of thing. And I had only shared that with one person outside.
Hmm.
Everybody else was in
And
that.
now the world knows.
So yeah, and I mean, it's just not anything that let's that I was ever depressed about, or it took me years to deal with and figure out and get over and all of that stuff. And it could be because I've known my biological mother all of my life, right?
Hmm.
I just found out at 9 that she was biologically my mother. But I mean, every year I would go to her state or her city, um, because that's where my brothers and sisters are. That's where my mom's siblings are, so on and so forth. So every summer I was there. And if, there was a funeral, then we would, of course, go for that as well. But I've known them all of my life. So maybe that's why I didn't have any, depression or anything like probably most people do, have some sort of issue when it comes to not having that connectivity. But that was it for me.
Could it have been that because she raised your siblings, correct? Or
No,
no? She didn't
no,
raise them either. Okay.
no, she didn't. Actually, so it's four of us. No, it's five of us, and I'm the oldest.
Okay.
So there are four more under me, but really, in terms of who she raised, she raised the youngest two.
Okay.
She
Gotcha.
raised the youngest two, and
Okay.
she,
Because what I what I was gonna say was maybe you had that feeling because she raised everyone else and not you, but that wasn't the case.
No, no,
Okay.
that wasn't the
Okay.
case.
So you grew up even being around your siblings and being around your biological mother. What was that like? Being that someone else was raised, like you call somebody else mama,
Yeah.
then
It was cool for me. I mean, I call my mama mama and I call my mother by her first name.
okay.
And that's just the way that it's been all of my
Was
life.
it kind of like, if I had to describe it, was it more like a sibling type relationship as opposed to a mother son type relation, more like a
More
big sister?
more like a cousin kind of
Okay.
deal, right? When I my interaction with uh although I knew she was my mother biologically, but like her sisters and brother, they were actually, I look at them as cousin with the exception of her oldest brother, which I called him uncle.
Okay.
So you see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
kind of a little bit convoluted, but it wasn't convoluted, for me. Now I will tell you where things got difficult.
Okay.
And here's where things got difficult. Mama passed away. And then I decided that, along with some other things that were going on, uh, we decided to actually move. And the best move to make was actually to the city of where my siblings are. Because I
Okay.
have a whole bunch of family, there. And I did not grow up with them, um, like a normal brother and sister, would. So we were like, hey, let's go to this city. And so went to that city, moved, and all of that. Now I'm having interaction with my biological mother on a somewhat regular basis. Um, my those that I refer to as my cousin. Um, I mean, technically, these are my aunts. So
Okay.
now here's where it was difficult. Because after Mama gone now, everybody want me to call them Aunt, Auntie, all that kind of stuff. And I'm saying in my head, now you never would have done. I'm your auntie. You never would have done that if my mama was here, because you
Yeah.
never did it. You
When
know,
she was here.
absolutely not. Never did it when she was here. So it's like, why make that kind of a move now? I mean, but hey, I'm past all of that. Same way with, you know, uh, grandmother who I call aunt because that's my mama's aunt. I mean, my mama's sister. Do you get what I'm saying? So you
Yes.
know who I'm talking about when I say my mama, right?
Right.
My mama is who raised me.
Right.
And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so her sister is technically my grandmother.
Grandmother.
And, grandmother wanted to be called, grandmother and all of that. And then I just realized, you know what? My doing that is more for them than it is for me. And it doesn't take anything away from me.
I wonder why they needed that or why they felt like they needed that. I know
That's,
you may not have the answer. I just,
yeah, that's a good question. And maybe just because, technically that's, I guess that's the way it is. I never even asked the question.
mm-hmm.
Initially I was upset, but I got over it relatively quickly and said, there's some things that mean something to others, and it doesn't take anything away from me. You know, uh, like I'll have somebody in in a lot of what I do. People are incredibly generous, and so one year for a birthday. Uh, I received a tie that probably I would not have picked on my own, but I would wear the tie, you know, just so the other party would know that I appreciated the thought of what they, them giving me a
Right.
tie. You see what I'm
Right.
saying? So
Right.
sometimes I do things. A lot of times we think that we are big on, oh, I got to do what I got to do for me, and life is not always like that.
Right. So, let me ask you this. Being that it was a kinship adoption,
Mhm.
was it a legally done, or, and I'm at, because back in the day sometimes they just say, come on, bring me that baby and I'm gonna raise them, or was this like on paper?
Yeah, there was paperwork. So my mom went through a legal process, which after I asked the question, I understood why, because um, my mom and dad actually, for a period of time, was raising my biological mother.
Mm,
So now we're
okay.
talking generational stuff,
Yeah.
right? And so,
Right.
yeah, and
Which is why they had her grades when you were looking through paperwork.
exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And so without divulging too much, my decision is that I ain't dealing with no more generational stuff.
Hmm.
Can I get
Okay.
a witness?
Listen, that generational curse, it's real. It is
Ooh,
real.
it's
It
real.
is
It's real
so real.
indeed.
Okay, so I want you to talk a little bit about, now you've moved into the city where your biological mom is and the family that you didn't necessarily grow up with. What is that relationship now like with your biological mom?
So I mean, it's hit and miss
Okay.
with respect to her. I mean, I would wish that the relationship would have progressed a lot more than it has, but she knows that I am here. There are we just haven't made that connection like a family like I would have wanted to. Same way with my siblings. I mean, I love them, and so here's what's weird, right? In my loving them, even though we didn't grow up together,
Hmm.
it's a different kind of love. Um,
Are you saying that the type of relationship you have with your biological mother versus the type of relationship you have with your siblings is different?
I am saying that it's weird because I had only known love to the degree of which I had interaction with people,
Hmm.
and not just interaction but proximity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, yeah, when we were kids we played and all of that, but I also played with all of my other cousins because there's like 1,000 of us. I didn't just spend time with them and them only,
Right.
because we're all first, right? First cousins and all of that stuff. So I spent a lot of time with a lot of my family as a kid. And then as we grew older, then we grew apart. And my thought process was that distance, not just geographically, but just the distance, because the relationship had not been developed. I
Gotcha.
just didn't expect to have made the kind of connection with these folks that are my brothers and sisters. And I actually learned that um, love is a strange thing,
Hmm.
because the boundaries of it, I don't know that love has boundaries.
No, I don't think it does either.
I don't know how you can like really contain it, because like seeing them and even being closer to them and talking to them, I mean, I love these folks like we grew up together,
I get that.
type.
I get
Yeah,
that.
But I was like,
Uh-huh.
it just kind of blew my mind.
Yeah,
You know?
I totally understand that
Yeah,
because I that is how I feel about my brothers. We didn't grow up together. I've
yeah.
only known them for a few years at this point.
And I will fight them over. I fight a rock over. You,
I
you know,
get that.
right? Like it's
Totally
like
get that.
that family, the family on the block. Like you can't mess with nobody in their family because the whole house is gonna
The
come out.
whole house, right. I get that.
I feel that right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that. And it's something that I can't explain. I've said that to people before. I can't explain it. I don't know what that is, but I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
it is what it is. That's how I feel. Um, I do want to ask you about your biological father. Do
Okay.
you, yeah, do you know who he is?
So the first time I met him, I was 13. And after 13, up until the time that I moved into that city, I had not ever seen him from that time.
Now, at 13, who takes you to go see him? Who says that's your daddy right there?
Biological mother.
Okay.
I happened to be, I think I just was out. Maybe well, I was in the house and I guess he was outside. He wanted to meet me. And I came out. She did the introduction.
Okay.
And, we shook hands and that pretty much was it. And I went back in the house. And when I moved to the city, guess who I ran into? My
Hello,
biological.
Dad.
So in my running into him, uh, we had a couple of conversations, and so one day I was like, no, this is it. The first time I saw him, I was like, yeah, so my mother said you're my dad, and he said that's what she said.
At thir- that's what he
No,
said to you at
this
13?
this is I'm an adult now.
Oh, you're an adult now. So at
Yeah,
13, he shook your hand, but
yeah,
now as an adult, he was like, well, that's what your mama said.
that's what
Okay,
she said.
sir.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't quite think, sir, you're being way too kind, but we'll just roll with that, okay?
Okay.
And yeah, I had some other stuff going through. I was like, huh?
Right.
And so um, we did have a couple of conversations, and so I think maybe on that second conversation, saw him again, and you know, at this point now his brother is engaged, who would technically be my uncle, right?
Right.
Talk to him with the greatest of ease every time I see him. It's like no strain at all. And when I saw my biological father, uh, about the second, maybe third time, I just said, "Hey, you know what? I'd like, I'm here. I'd like to, get to know you. You know, I think I asked him for his phone number, and he was like taken aback, like why? I was like, hold up, I'm grown now. I don't want anything because the way he said it was like,
That's what I was getting ready to say. I'm
I
glad
was
you
getting
said
ready
I
to
don't
leave him
want
off
anything.
back
Why
check. Yeah,
do we
I'm
why do
telling you.
we always
Yeah,
why is that always the thing? What do you want?
yeah.
Why do you what is that?
I mean, I'm saying, and this is no, no. I don't want to sound arrogant, but from all appearances, it looked like I was just in a different and perhaps slightly better position, than he
Oh,
was.
I'll say it for you, sir. You could probably use my help.
Okay,
I'll say it
okay,
for you.
okay. Thank you. You know what? I'll send me your bill.
Say it. And
We'll submit this through my insurance and make sure you get paid. But this
Lord have mercy.
this is
Now, do
very.
you have siblings on your father's side of the family?
I do not.
Oh,
So
you're the
wait, wait,
only
wait, 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 wait. You mean my biological father?
your biological father side. Yeah.
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Because you
clueless.
guys have not.
From that day,
Yeah.
we have not had contact.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
not like your uncle that you talk to periodically?
I just never even asked the question. Now that you said
You're
that,
supposed to
mean,
ask that question.
I, you know, it like sometimes I can be as a very matter of fact.
Okay.
You don't want to fool with me? Fine. I don't want to fool with no parts of you.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I don't know if that's good or bad or indifferent, but it is what it is. And so, but now, Coach Tarsha, since you said that, the next time I see him, I'm going to definitely ask.
Yeah, you're supposed to,
Hey,
yeah, ask all the questions. You're supposed to
yeah,
ask that.
I wouldn't think, I was like, this
You were like, done. I don't
this
want.
gentleman don't want to be by. I'm like, bro, I don't need nothing from you, cuz. So,
Yeah.
if you don't
I,
want to, have a cup of coffee, you don't want to chop it up, I'm good with that. I've been good all this time, so you know.
yeah. Okay, but I want to ask one more question about that meeting at 13 because at 13, now I know you had father figure in your life already, like you had dad.
Hmm.
So was it like, hey, how you doing? And then like, okay, I met my dad.
Very
Moving
much,
on.
very much so. And so, what's interesting is that even after that time where we had that, really crazy kind of conversation, um, he and I had another conversation, and I come to find out that he thought or felt like I probably had something against him, or that, my mom had put something in my head negative about him. And I'm like, because he brought up this fact of, um, when I went back in the house, he heard them in the house laughing and, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, sir, I don't even remember none of what you're talking about. My
Mm,
parents have never said anything to me about you. Number one, period. And number two, they never said anything negative to me about you. So I believe that after all of that time, because this was 13, now I'm 30 something,
right.
and all of that time in between there, he's thinking in his head, they done went in there and poisoned this boy about me and, blah, 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 blah. Like, no,
So he
sir.
had this whole made up scenario in his head that he made the truth.
I want to think yes, right? Because when I told him that they couldn't have been laughing about him and that they never said anything to me, because he felt like they had said something to me even in that moment. I was like, nobody said anything to me about you, period. So what you're holding on to something that never happened.
That's not real. Yeah.
It's not real at all.
How many relationships are wrecked by people holding on to stuff that are not real? It's not a thing, sir.
It's
None of
terrible.
that's a thing.
Yeah.
And you're upset about it for years. And it's not even a thing
Not even a thing. Only a thing in your mind.
in your mind.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, he was like, man, I thought, then he began to just kind of tell me what he thought. And I was like, no, sir. No, sir. I was like,
Communication.
and I mean, and even if they had, we 20 years later
Yeah.
or 30 years later,
Or
here
30
we are.
years later. Like even if they had, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like, bro, we 30 years later into this thing, and I'm coming to you on some new stuff. But I mean, it's cool. If you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. I'm not going to force you to do it. I love to get to, know you, know more about you, that side of my family. Maybe we can build a relationship. But
That's the thing that I need or rather birth families and birth parents to understand. when us as adoptees come back, it's all about a relationship at that point.
Mhm.
We want to know, we want the relationship. We may have questions because we want to know. But I
He
mean,
he thought I wanted child support.
that's
I don't know. I don't know. But we don't always want like something like that. We just coming for a relationship.
just come in for a relationship.
Yeah.
And, to know a part of ourselves that we probably don't know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
you're the ones with the key and the answers.
Now I did ask my uncle this. I did ask him about stuff like one of the things that I asked my uncle was about like health stuff. Like, do I need to be
Absolutely.
worried about anything health wise,
Absolutely.
and pretty much like the worst thing that I would have had to worry about is the fact that um they drank a lot.
So alcoholism.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, it is
Yeah.
what it is. That's
Right.
that's not an issue for me. That's not a vice for me at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Glad to know that.
Yeah.
So at this point, the relationship with your biological mom is, and the siblings.
Yeah. I mean, so my siblings and I, we get along, but not all of us get along. So there's like
Okay.
a group over here and a group over here, and sometimes this one don't get along with that one. And it's not that there's no love. What it is they just haven't learned how to get along.
Hmm.
And to get along, there are some things that you have to either get over or allow yourself to heal, right? Because for a while, you know, my siblings felt like, oh, I had it so much better.
Oh, I was just going there. Get out of my head.
No, go
I was
ahead,
just going there.
say it. I'm
I
gonna.
was just going to ask you, did they feel like you had your quote unquote special, and you had this, and we
Oh
okay,
yeah, they
speak on it, go ahead.
I'm loaded because I was raised dressing like this,
Right.
so that's how I was raised. I was telling the guy, I was telling the guy the other day, like I was a kid in high school and the only kid in high school in a metropolitan area. I carried a briefcase.
You were that kid. Okay.
I wore my jeans. I had on a shirt, and I used to wear a back then. Skinny ties were in, so I had a leather skinny tie, and you know,
Sound like
you
circa 80s to me.
I was the bomb. You couldn't tell me a word. You
I'm
understand?
on leather skinny tie.
I keep my collar all day long. I know kids don't pop their collar no more, but somebody can relate. So I thought I was the stuff. But so as a result,
Yeah.
you know, I believe they thought that hey, I had it so much better than they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to bring, I won't say that I had it better. I'll just say I had it different,
Different.
right? Because at the end of the day, we all survived what it is that we went through.
Right.
It's not to say I didn't have any struggles. I just didn't have the struggles they had.
Right.
Thank
And
God.
oh,
Am I
yeah,
allowed to say that on this podcast?
you are
Thank
absolutely allowed to say down there.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Yes.
It, don't go too much further than that. I
I
don't
had
want
the same testimony.
I don't want to break down and start dancing and carrying on this.
Look,
Yeah,
I understand. I totally get that sentiment. I do.
yeah,
And people, I like what you said. Not better, just different.
yeah,
Not better, just different.
It's just, and here's a key difference. And I know we're laughing and talking, right? But uh, even my relationship with God, I developed that at an early age. But they all
Mm,
went to church. But there's a difference between going to church and having a relationship.
come on, somebody.
And so, now some of them have gone beyond or grown beyond
Yeah.
just going to church and
All right.
actually have a relationship with God. Um, and some of them are just at different stages. It's not better or worse. It's just different.
It's just different. It's
Yeah.
just different.
Yeah.
So, um, I want to ask you this because your story is so, to me, it's very different. All of our stories are different,
Yeah.
but your kinship story to me is like a combination of a kinship adoption and an open adoption. And I say that because you still had that relationship and you still grew up and it kept up with you. So there's never really like a time where you lost touch with anybody.
Correct. Correct.
So being in the place that you are now, if you wanted to say anything to the adoptees and relationship and birth parents and finding that, what would you say to them? How to navigate that? Because there are people that watch this podcast and they're like, I want to find them. I want that relationship. Or I know them and I want a better relationship. What would you say to them?
I mean, I would definitely say this because even beyond that, the story continues just simply because, and it allows me to have a different vantage point because not only had I been adopted, but I too have adopted. Right? And
Hmm.
so I would say that um, wherever you are in terms of wanting to find or you know who those people are and you want to further the relationship, you have to mentally and psychologically be ready to accept people for who they are and where they are.
I wish somebody had told me that. I
Yeah.
had to learn how to meet people where they are.
And it's tough, right? Because when you have this open heart thing, right, you want to love everybody and you want to be loved by everybody. And that was something else. I don't know. I mean, like we say as people, right? You don't have to be liked by everybody and get over not being liked by everybody. I'm probably one of those people, and I know I'm not alone, but I embrace who I am and I embrace where I am. I like to be liked. How about that? I like to be loved.
Right,
I would love to think, I would love to be loved by everybody, but I know that's not the case.
right,
But that
right.
I would just like for it to be that way. And, in that, and perhaps you're like that too, but what we have to do, and you am,
I am.
so so what do people do that are like you and I who love everybody and we just want to love people, right? Guess what we have to have? Boundaries.
Mm.
And so
You
for
are
me,
correct. You are correct because here, and I'm just figuring that out, but you are correct because I have started setting them. You're
and,
correct
and
because that protects me.
exactly, it does. And then watch this. And I don't mean boundaries that are so rigid. I have people in my life that I love, right? But I come to the realization that let me give you a simple example. I am closer to people that I grew up with than my own family. yet they are not
Mm,
my blood, but we did everything together.
right.
Now we're adults. And so, in my head, you
That's
call
true.
me, I'm going to answer. But the only time that we talk should not be when I've reached out to you.
Can you say that again?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
The,
I'm happy to.
the,
I'm going to send you my bill now. So
because the phone works both
it
ways.
works both ways, right? And
Yes.
so I had to get to the place where I've been through all of the emotions. I would be sad, then I'm confused. Well, I know this Negro know, you know, he might. So how come this Negro ain't calling me back? And then I just had to catch myself because I done been from being sad and to being beyond angry, being
Irritated and
yeah,
yeah,
all of that.
all
But
of it.
yeah, I had to put that boundary there for myself.
And
So
then for me, I had to put the boundary there and then learn how to meet people where they are. And that
meet
has
people where
helped me.
they are, right? And so what now? The result is this. Number one, you meet people, where they are. So I'm not so petty that when they do call me, I ain't gonna answer the phone. I'm gonna
Right,
do that.
right, right. No, absolutely not. Right.
I'm gonna pick up the phone
I'm gonna
and
pick up the
talk
phone.
as if we never lost contact.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
even
However,
if during that time where there's no communication, if something were to happen and they needed me right now, I would drop what I'm doing and try my best to be there.
absolutely. Absolutely.
You know,
I, I
and
love
so
that.
that's I
There's
like
an adoptee out there that needed to hear that. I promise you.
really. But did I
Promise you.
just did I just contradict myself because I also said that as it relates to my biological father, when he didn't want to be bothered, I was like, nope for
Well, we
me.
just gonna say that you've learned a lesson in this right now. See, this podcast even helped you, and now
It's helping. It's helping.
you're gonna do something a little different.
Helping. It's helping. And just in case, if I get a little misty, I got my
You got your tissue right there. I keep some around here too. Yeah, see this podcast. Yeah, I'm gonna go and send you my bill. Yeah.
yeah. It's cool. So I don't know if that's maybe that's just a different kind of boundary. I don't know. And guess what? I'm really cool with not knowing. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm. I need to get there because I'm not cool with not knowing.
I get it. I get it. I get it.
Like I
But
need to know,
I
but
promise you,
I
if a
still
door
have
opens,
questions.
I got it. And I promise you, if a door opens, I would likely walk through.
I will.
Yeah,
Trust
I
me,
would
I
likely
will.
walk through that door
I
because
will.
I'm going to. This adoption thing can be traumatic for some people.
Absolutely. It is for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I've had trauma in my life, but I've learned how to manage trauma and not allow myself to get stuck in a place. And that's something that I think happens to people, period, right?
Mm,
Something will happen and we get stuck in that place and then we can't move beyond that place. I refuse to be stuck.
mm, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so for those who are listening, you want to develop that relationship, or you even want to explore to make that connection or even a reconnection, you just have to, as I said, uh, just be willing to accept people for where they are, and then also accept the fact that if they don't want to be bothered with you, they don't want to be bothered with you. That's not an indication or an implication upon you. That is just where they are.
Here they are.
Yeah.
And I think
And
no,
no, I
I
was
was
just going to say we accept them for who they are, but we also have to accept them for where they are. We can't make people move beyond where they currently are. They have to be willing,
Right.
because you really can't. That would be like a lopsided relationship, right? If I want to give you love and you don't want to reciprocate that love, what ends up happening is it's a lopsided relationship, and somebody's taking
Absolutely.
advantage of somebody one way or the other, and then the one that's being taken advantage of, you're gonna end up upset.
Very upset and feelings
So
hurt.
manage that. Manage that.
So I think we can end on that note, on that beautiful note.
Wow.
I want you to, I know that you and your wife have a lot of beautiful things going on. So share with the people very quickly how they can find you and the things that you have going on in your ministry and your wife's books.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let me talk about my wife. You can find her on Facebook and Instagram at A Woman Worth Holding On To. We've released her to minister to women. She's actually ministered to women pretty much across this country. And we've even had some that she's ministering to overseas as well. We also have a publishing company. So if you're looking for information on that, you can look for the Writer's Nest, or you can always reach her on A Woman Worth Holding On To, which she keeps pushing me to, do this book thing. And so having this conversation with you, I think I told you before, I think I probably need to go ahead and start documenting some stuff uh,
Absolutely.
as far as this adoption stuff is concerned.
Absolutely. Document it.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and whatnot. And I work primarily now in the background, so uh,
Okay.
but it's all good. It's
Okay.
all good in the hood.
I
So
love how you
need to
brag on
reach
your
me.
wife. I
Huh?
love it. I
Oh,
love how you brag on your wife.
oh
Love
yeah.
it, love it.
She's the bomb.com.
As
So
she should be.
yeah, she
What?
had to be in order for me to mess with. But anyway,
Uh-oh. Okay. See, I'm reeling them back in. Let me reel
that's
them back.
another. I can tell you that story another time.
Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the Adoption Journey
You're
podcast.
for
And
the
you're very welcome. And until next week, bye, family.
good night.